I know I can't build a Ferrari. I know that I couldn't build a Lamborghini, let alone buy a Lamborghini, no matter how wrecked it is. So I figured, after looking and searching, what about Aston Martin? Welcome back to Beezy Builds. What made me want to build this Aston Martin? A lot of things. I grew up in a body shop. My grandpa was a body man, my dad was a body man. Dad was also in the Air Force, did body work on the side, and then eventually got in a position to open his own shop, which I was fortunate to grow up a very good life provided by my father. And when I was a little kid, I was 5 or 6 years old, and he took me to his body shop in Tacoma, and they were working on a General Lee, and it blew my mind. I knew at that point what I was going to do with my life. I was going to restore cars. I was that young that I knew what I would do, and that's a blessing and a curse. I never outgrew cars. I never outgrew wanting to fix cars up. In high school, I had a 67 Mustang that belonged to Dan Perry, that was beat to shit and rusted out and 6-cylinder, and man, it took me a million different ways of finagling, but I got that car. I had to buy a truck from one dude, sell it to another dude, who at that point he would only agree to trade that truck with that guy, and I had to work a bunch of deals, but we made it work, and that taught me a lesson there about car dealing, and I got that in my blood. And we had done a lot of muscle cars. We did the 67 Camaro that came to me as a Purple Barney. I traded a 2002 Saturn for the 67 Camaro as a wrecked rolling drag car shell. And at the same time as I built that car, or we built that car, I hate to say I because it takes a team to do it, found my 1970 Firebird Super Duty at a wrecking yard in Puyallup. And I saw that on Craigslist, and I'm like, no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Man, it had that Formula Firebird hood, and it had the 455 with the triple X heads, and I didn't care that the trunk band was rusted out, and the rear frame rails were rusted out. I had to have it. I had to save it. And so we built those two cars side by side, expecting to take them to Barrett-Jackson. That was always the plan. Man, that Camaro, Synergy Green, 396 big block, all the goodies. All the goodies. We did a Chit Foos inspired RSSS stripe on it from what he did on Overhaul in black. God, that was one bad bitch. The 70 Firebird, we did our own. My wife Melissa came up with this just insane graphics package. It was killer. Rusto modded both of these cars, and they were badass. But that thing I talked about in the last story, they didn't get to Barrett-Jackson. The Camaro I sold to a guy out of North Dakota. We actually met in Idaho at my uncle's shop, and God, he tried to beat me down on the price once we were there. It really pissed me off, but it worked out. And he was a crybaby little son of a bitch. Nothing was good enough for this guy. He got $100,000 worth of car for $40,000 and cried the whole goddamn time. The Formula Firebird, I sold to a guy through one of my Facebook groups. He was on a Firebird page. Man, he had to have this car. And this is a particular year that at Barrett-Jackson, these cars were going for record money, 100 grand, 120 grand. Didn't even have to be a Trans Am, just had to be a Formula Firebird. I know mine would have taken top dollar. And this dude comes and he has to have it. He pays me $100 bills. He said, do I need to trailer this or can I drive it? I said, no, it's a good car, man. We built this car. 455 Ram Air, dual 600 Elbrock carbs. Man, it's good to go. I'd taken it out, driven it quite a bit. It was an amazing Firebird. Not a drag car, just a hell of a cruiser. And pretty good speed too, a lot of power. He goes to leave, and I said, man, are you sure you want to drive this with no insurance? And he goes, oh no, my State Farm will cover me on whatever I drive for 24 hours. I was like, no, dude, you need Haggerty. It's not going to cover you on this. Well, he leaves. He didn't listen to me. He leaves. And I know the way he went. Out through Preston, get on I-90, head eastbound, and just punch it. It's at 70 miles an hour with 4 lanes wide right there. And my friend Jeremy calls me. Jay Holmes calls me, and he's like, dude, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm great. Why? And he goes, I just watched you wreck your Firebird. And I was like, what? He's like, it lost control coming on the on-ramp like a raped ape, and all of a sudden spun out and hit 4 cars going across all 4 lanes in the center barrier. And I'm like, oh no. The next call I get is this dude, and they bought the car. He's like, do you have a tow truck? I said, no, but I use this company, and they'll come pick you up. And he's like, well, it's closer to your shop than my house, so can I have it towed back? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I talked to Jeremy. Jeremy said this guy was just flying onto the freeway and lost control. And then it was springtime, so I imagine the roads might have been a little damp, and ass end slipped out from underneath him. But after about 20 minutes of standing there waiting for his kid to get back, because his kid had already made it all the way back to Lakewood, he says, it just suddenly switched from drive to reverse and spun out on me. Can I get my money back? I thought he was joking. And I laughed and I laughed and I laughed. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? You can't be serious. He was serious. He was effing serious, if you can believe that. And no, there's no way you're getting your money back. It ended up, this guy left the car in the shop for a month, wrecked, before he finally had it towed home. And I couldn't believe that my wife is a lawyer. I'm going to sue you. Everything out of the book. I'm like, dude, you wrecked the car. I'm sorry you spent a lot of money, but you wrecked it. And I had to actually block him, and I don't know what came of that car. The Camaro, the dude in North Dakota sold to another guy who called me up and said that when Biden shut the pipeline down, this guy lost his job because he had oil money. And he panicked and he didn't know what to do. And so this other guy bought the car and he says, I'm going to fix it up and take it to Mecum. What can you tell me about it? And I never met the guy in person. We had some great phone conversations. Told him all about the car. And the car came across at Mecum. I watched it live on TV with my guys. And the things that I was sad that I didn't make the money on it, but the things that the announcers had said about the car, I really felt a lot of pride. And was proud of my guys, was proud of myself, and everything we'd accomplished with that car because it looked just as good as the day we sold it. The new owner made a lot of money on it, and I didn't lose money, but I broke even, so I was okay with that. So then looking for our next project, I now had a crew that was better than I could ever possibly ask for. I have hands down the best variety of technicians I could ever wish for in the industry. I know there's a lot of fantastic shops out there. I'm glad they found their niche, but these guys are something else. I met Antonio. I only met Antonio a couple of years ago. He worked with my guy Marco at another shop, and they've been friends throughout the years. And Marco kept talking about him for years, and finally Antonio was ready to make the move, came to work for me. Fantastic talent and good person. He's since moved on to Tesla, doing great with them, still comes in and works on the Aston with us on Saturdays. Steve I met, probably 18 years ago at Subaru, and we became friends quickly. And Steve always called me sir, and I've never understood why he calls me sir. Thought maybe he just couldn't remember my name, but no, it's a sign of respect. I went out and started my own thing. A few years later, he came on board. It's been with us ever since. And Steve's skill level is, man, it's insane what this guy can do. I don't know how he fits all that information in his head, but he's amazing. We got Marco and Paul. They're great too. I know we make fun of Paul a lot, but he's fantastic. And so I closed my Seattle store at the beginning of the pandemic because I could just see how bad it was going to get. Primary clientele being Amazon and Facebook employees. That was 90% of our work, and they worked from home for 3 years. So I closed Seattle and leased out the building, and that's the best business decision I've ever made at the best time you could possibly make it, January 1st, 2020. So moving on to the Aston Martin, these guys are producing amazing work out of our shop, just amazing. And I knew it was time to step up the game for muscle cars. I'd been in muscle cars my whole life. I mentioned my dad had a body shop growing up. I discovered in junior high, about 7th or 8th grade, I'd get in trouble if I got suspended. They'd make me go to the body shop and work. And I had to sand cars and do all this gross work. And it was like, please don't throw me in the briar patch, Mr. Farmer, because I loved it. I loved it more in school. I intentionally got in trouble to be sent to the body shop to work. And I guess taking me there to work really backfired because it just made me get in more trouble. But thanks, Mom and Dad. I appreciate that. So here we are all these years later, and it was time to step up our game. And I'm like, what can I build? By owning a Maserati, which is the worst car you can ever buy, all Maserati Quattroporte owners that say how wonderful they are and how reliable they are, let's face it, guys, we're all liars. It's the biggest piece of shit I've ever bought. I've got $55,000 in this thing, mostly in parts, and I haven't put 1,500 miles on it in 5 years since I've owned it. We're all the same, but we keep them around because when they do run right, they're amazing. But I know that because of the parts prices on that, I can't build a Ferrari. I just know I would never be able to build it. And so after looking at options, I know I can't build a Ferrari. I know that I couldn't build a Lamborghini, let alone buy a Lamborghini, no matter how wrecked it is. So I figured, after looking and searching, what about Aston Martin? Because Aston Martin Vantage is one of the most beautiful cars that I have ever seen. And I think that the Vantage is, just personally, I think it's the most beautiful car since the Shelby Cobra. I really do. And I think in years to come, it will be a timeless collector that will only go up in value. And the parts prices, from what I could find, didn't seem to be too bad. They're less than a Maserati. They're certainly less than a Ferrari. And I thought, I'm going to start looking for a Vantage. And I had a budget in mind of about $50,000 that I could realistically put into a Vantage and then sell it and make some more money, even if it had a salvage title, if it was 2014 or newer with the 4.7 instead of the 4.3, it'd be all right. I'd make that money back. Well, I found one that I thought was a perfect example, and I called the place and that was selling it, talked to them, asked them, is there any damage beyond what I see in the pictures? And they flat out lied and said, no, what you see in the pictures is what you get. There's no frame damage that we can see. And of course, we all know that when I received the car, there was a hole through the floorboard and the firewall and the dashboard caused by a fire hydrant that they conveniently took pictures around. And that both the front subframes, the upper and lower, were both damaged. And the body, although it looked like it just needed, the pictures just needed body panels, fenders, hood, quarter panels, door. You know, it didn't look too bad. That was a lie. But I knew that my guys could fix this, and I knew that they had the skill to do it. What I didn't realize is what an excellent team building skill it would be. Steve has actually referred to working on the Aston Martin as therapy on Saturdays, and that feels good. Marco doesn't like to be on camera. He helped us out in the beginning. He got frustrated by me just because of the way he likes to do things his way, which I understand. We all have our own way. But I was very specific in the way that I wanted this car done, nut and bolt, tagged and bagged, and so he's not working on the car, but Steve and Antonio and I have. And it's been a fantastic experience, and the YouTube channel came from it, and I hope with our future projects that you guys want to follow along with it. I appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying it so far. I really, really appreciate you sticking around, and if there's something that we're not showing that you want to see, or you want to see something different, or you want to know something a little more in depth, mention it in the comments. Send us a message. Love to hear it. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for sticking around. We're almost done with this car, and I'm very grateful for anyone who watches this and all of you. And I'm very grateful for my team. We've worked really, really hard for this. Next video, I'm going to tell you how much it costs to build this car.